Hello, and welcome to season 2, episode 1 of African American Voices of Charles County, presented by the Charles County NAACP. I am your host, Joe Sampson Jr., and today my guest will be Miss Sandy Washington, the Executive Director of Lifestyles of Maryland Incorporated. We're going to have a wonderful conversation with Miss Washington about who she is, why she does what she does, and all the things that lead into making Lifestyles of Maryland Incorporated such a landmark in the Charles County community. So stick with us. We'll be right back when we talk with Miss Washington. Welcome back. First, I'd like to start by thanking you, Ms. Washington, for your willingness to participate in this interview series. As we talked a little bit before we came on, why we started the series, what it was for, and who it was designed to highlight. Lifestyles is an incredible organization, um, and so uh, not only do anyone in Charles County knows what Lifestyles is, what they do. We'll get into more of that, but I suspect not a lot of people know who Miss Sandy Washington is. And so we want to spend a little time today just getting to know who you are, and what leads or what led into you to do such incredible work affecting the lives of individuals in Charles County.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for having me. As we started out saying, I was like, I don't know what I could lend to this because you've got some incredible people that are in this county and are doing great things. But am so glad to be here and maybe share a little of my experiences and what you've tapped into when we started talking about why I do what I do and where I'm from. I'm one of those transplants in Charles County. I was actually born
Okay.
in Charleston, South Carolina. So
Okay.
I am a Geechee by birth. Um, and those
Nice.
who know South Carolina know that. But I left South Carolina with my family at 3 years old, and moved to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So a Philly girl by being raised in Philly, born in South Carolina but raised in Philly, and um, Philadelphia was an experience. It was my home. It was my home for all of my childhood after 3 years old, and part of my adult life. And um, it was where I met my husband. It's so funny because I tell my children, God has certainly ordained things for us when a young girl born in South Carolina moves to Philadelphia, meets a guy from Georgia, and and gets married there, and we start to raise our family. And just so blessed because I look back now and realize that, yeah, God couldn't have connected me with anyone. He had to have somebody that was going to bear all this,
All of that, right?
deal with all of this. So those were my beginnings. And my husband was military,
Okay.
so he was. We were blessed that he had the advantage of not only having employment, but while he was while we were in Philadelphia, he had the advantage of going to Drexel University, and the military took care of that. For me, it wasn't an easy road. I took classes at Temple University and continued to go through there,
Mhm.
and majoring in psych. I was a psych major and doing some things there to build up to later getting credentialed and degreed, but it wasn't an easy.
Okay. All right. So hold on. I think we're skimming over some things that
Yeah.
that I think we may need to double back to. So first off, I am also from Philadelphia,
All right.
born and raised. Um, So we won't talk too much about in the weeds, but I I will be completely honest here and say that I knew you were from Philadelphia, because a very interesting thing happened in so my mother in Philly is a behavioral health specialist, and she's been that for 40 years, 30 years. And so she moves around Philly a lot. She started a lot of programs in Philadelphia. So public health has always been her thing. Helping young people, helping adults, has been her true life's passion. Well, in doing so, we live uptown. My mom lives uptown in Mount Airy,
Mhm.
and she goes to she has a PO box instead of having mail delivered to the house. I don't know why. It's my mom. And so one day, I for a while I've been talking to my mom about moving down here to Maryland. And in doing so, I said, you could do it. And what you do, people need that everywhere, right? And so you can do that. And so I guess I had just gotten off the phone with her, and she was in the post office as normal, and she was chatting with the lady in the post office, the postmaster, who is a friend of hers. They talk all the time. And so she said, "My son is trying to get me to move to Maryland." And she said, "Well, what part?" And she said, "He lives in Waldorf." And the lady was like, "Well, my sister-in-law lives in Waldorf." And she said, "Well, what's her name?" So my mom, as usual, because she always runs into someone I know, she's like, "Hey, have you heard of this lady named Sandy Washington?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know that name." Now, this was a few years ago, and I said, "Yeah, I know that name," because I had just gone to an event at the church in La Plata. This was a few years ago, and I forget there was a conversation about police reform and brutality, and you all had worked together with NAACP at the time to do it. And I said, "Yeah, I just left an event with lifestyles," and then I looked it up, and that's how um, I came to know all that you all do aside from that. But it was really wild
Isn't that
that
something?
how that happens. So where are you from in Philadelphia?
So I grew up in West Philadelphia.
Okay,
Uh, I grew up on Wanamaker Street.
Wanamaker.
Yeah,
All right.
people kind of know between 57th and 58th Street on Wanamaker Street, one of those small streets there.
Yep.
Um, and after we got married, we moved to Mount Airy. We lived on Williams Avenue.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, the 8600 block of Williams Avenue.
Wait a second. One of my best friends on the planet lived on the 8600 block of Williams Avenue.
Who
Their
was that?
last name was Vivian, and their son's name was Lauren Mitchell. They had an older brother, Bobby Mitchell.
I,
Um, Mr. Mitchell ended up passing away in the early 90s. But yeah,
I,
8600 Williams Avenue. My best friend lived there as a kid.
yes. We were, and I don't want to jump ahead because when you start talking about advocacy, honestly, that's where my advocacy began on Williams Avenue. It was,
Wow.
we and as you know, Philly, and you know the area. Well, Mount Airy was like that was like a step up. I worked at Chestnut Hill Hospital, and so we were in Mount Airy. When you move up there,
Yeah,
that's upscale here.
absolutely.
So we were living in there, and then we had a series of break-ins that were happening in our community, and um, we knew, some folks. The mayor, Wilson Good, was
Wilson
the
Good.
mayor at the
That's
time,
right.
and so we were having these break-ins, and we just couldn't get the police to take us seriously. And so we actually formed a few women, got together, and we called the mayor's office, and they were had people had told us that, well, if they're not in the house, they can't do this and they can't do that. And I don't know where I mustered this idea from. So I called the mayor's office and I said, so could somebody tell me, please forgive me, I don't want to sound violent, but I just said, so if we shoot the intruder and they fall backwards and they're not in our house, what does that mean? Or if we shoot them, should they fall forward? And immediately, they sent officers from all over. The police came, they researched, they investigated, and that day they got the folks that had been breaking into the skylights. That's what was happening. They were coming into the skylights. If you know those homes, they're row homes.
Through the
And
bathroom.
if you got into one, if you got on the roof of one, you could go from house to house. And so they were breaking into the skylights. And at that moment, I realized that I'd had enough. And so we just kind of spearheaded that group and got it going. And from that time on, we realized our power as people. And so not only did we get those folks caught, we also started getting the streets repaired. We put new street lights up. We uh, got new sidewalks, and uh, so it went from there. And that's when I really saw what happens when people join together and they have a common cause, and it's for the entire group. It's not for one person. And so that kind of started that. From then on, we had people from there that actually went into politics, and it
Yeah.
became, went from there. And so that started it. That was it. And
So that was the advocacy seed that was planted
yes,
out of
yes.
a personal need, which blossomed into, which obviously later on, as we'll see and talk about more about, is how it grew to more of a community mindset. So let me ask you this: before we move too much further, you said you matriculated through obviously Philadelphia schools. I don't know if it were public schools. If you went,
Public schools,
okay,
all public schools. Started in, I did some uh, Catholic school. I don't think I was made for Catholic school. So,
okay,
so through public schools, yes.
nice, okay. And so, my father-in-law is from West Philly. He's a proud. I think he went to Overbrook, and his
So
brothers
did
went to West Philly. So,
Overbrook.
um, but nonetheless, so you graduate high school. What did you think your plans were for your life when you graduated high school, and where did that take you immediately? Did you go directly to college? Did you?
I graduated high school and got married.
Okay.
Um, I grew up, I tell people I didn't know I was poor until I became an adult.
Mhm.
Because after that, I realized what we didn't have and things that were not really taught or spoken of in our household.
Yeah.
Um, I grew up, my aunt raised me after a period of, I was, people don't know if I have, last year I was fortunate enough to become an author or co-author in some book, but I came through a period of time in foster care, um, uh, which was a little rough time in my life. And then
Yeah.
my aunt raised me with my three cousins, one who worked for government, one for worked for a hospital, and the other became an attorney, and went to Temple and then Temple Law School. And so he had such an influence on my life. He was the attorney that represented the move. Um, uh,
Wow.
Anthony, Anthony Jackson. He was with Black and Jackson Law Firm. So he had a big impact on my life. Things went sour for him later after the move
Absolutely.
movement
Yeah.
and things like that. But they had an influence on me, and so college and all of that was not the big thing that was taught. It was survival. My in my youth, I grew up around gangs. Anybody that knew, you had Media Street, Master Street, all of that. It was a gang atmosphere, and we survived in a gang atmosphere. That's it. We knew where to say we were from in whatever area we were in,
Yeah.
and how we could make it through. And so we did that. And so um, survival is crucial. And then in meeting my husband, we kind of grew up together, I think, with while he went to, I said he went to Drexel, but he also worked for, he was fortunate to get a corporate job with General Electric Medical Systems. And the corporate world kind of raised me through adulthood because they showed me he was the only Black in an organization. And so when couples went to these company functions, I got to see how other people were living, and it was different from how I grew up. My influence growing up, not only was I raised by my aunt, but every Saturday we went to clean Miss Feeney's house in up in the upper parts of Pennsylvania, in Lansdowne and Lancaster area, and we were going to clean her house. So that's where I got to know about antiques and the finer things and different types of meals, because I was so fortunate that Miss Feeney allowed us to eat lunch when we were cleaning her house. And
Wow.
she had the best bread, and she had the best lunch meat, and the different things that she exposed me to. That was my childhood. When I looked at her antique pedestal table when I was polishing it, I knew that this was something I would want to do. So I look back today and I see all the antiques that I've accumulated in my home, and it's because I believe I cleaned so many of them, and
Right.
I thought these things were great. So while other friends had gone from high school and went right to college, I was actually working my way through. And then shortly after, I had our first child. And so I was trying to raise a child and take classes and do all of these things. But I look back now, and for the last 10 years, I've been a field instructor for the University of Southern California School of Social Work, and looked at,
Wow.
I think I have 5 MSWs that have now gone through my field instruction and being training. So I look at where God started, and how I had to work to get all these pieces together to get to where I am today. So I value that. It wasn't an easy road, but it was a road that I continued to travel.
Wow.
So
Well, yeah, like you said, it definitely wasn't an easy road. And so, but that road started its journey and brought you to Charles County. So what we're going to do is we'll take a quick break, and then when we return on the other side, we're going to talk about how you got to Charles County, how that road. I don't know if it was an exit, if the exit was 10 miles down the road or 1 mile off, and you had to cross 3 lanes. But we're going to figure out how you got here. All right. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
We're the NAACP. We don't follow movements, we define movements.
All right. Welcome back. So, in our first segment, we learned some really interesting things about Miss Washington and her upbringing. And our connection is even closer than I expected. Um, from through my parent, my mom in the post office, and my best friend as a child living on the same block as her, and all of that. We talked about um, just brief times through foster care, being raised by her aunt and the individuals in her life, along with her husband, but her cousins, who I'm sure are like siblings, and their influence on her. And I before we really get into what brought you to Charles County, I think it's important to take a quick break, quick mental break here, and really point out something that you may have slightly glossed over. Uh, the In Philly, we just called them the Move people. Um, but the Move organization is notorious in Philadelphia history in terms of what happened to them. Now, there are a number of documentaries. There's a recent documentary by the son of one of the gentlemen on HBO called 40 Years, 40 Years Removed, or something like that, regarding the life as a child in the Move organization. We all know what happened with them, the city literally dropping bombs on a row house in West Philadelphia off of Osage Avenue, and even as recently as a few years ago, I say within the last 5 or 6 years, the the prosecutorial attorney who signed the order for the bomb to be dropped attempted to run for mayor in Philly, and obviously with a number of the people from the Move organization finally being released from prison, there was a big uproar, and it brought it back to the forefront. And so I don't want to gloss over how important this individual was that you mentioned had a profound effect on your life, because um, his role in representing the Move organization at that time would be the equivalent of career suicide.
Mhm.
And so, as a lawyer, and what they represented to the city at that time was was something, because the Move organization had a number of run-ins with the police department, um,
Rizzo.
with
Mhm.
Frank Rizzo, right? There was some really horrendous things that happened to them at the hands of the Philadelphia Police Department. And so, Mayor Good was the city's first black mayor, but he
Mhm.
was also the mayor who was the residing mayor at the time that the bomb was dropped on a house in West Philadelphia. So I think it is really, really important to foot stomp the importance that your cousin had in the city, and how that is not a light, um that's not something to gloss over in terms of his effect on your life. If you can, just briefly, and then we'll get back on track, kind of walk me through what it felt to be a family member of a person going through the career suicide of assisting those now infamous individuals.
Well, I look at it now and I see, excuse me, what a sacrifice that was. Um, you know, but it was his belief. It was he saw, he showed, when you believe in something, when you believe that in justice, and as an attorney, and you believe in justice, then you need to stand behind that. And whether no one stands with you through that whole process, you have to stand with your beliefs. And I saw him do that. But I saw also being ostracized as a result of standing with a group. It would be like representing the Black Panthers.
Yeah.
In the arena he was in, that was not a popular thing to do. So I thank you for recognizing that, because I think that eventually it led to his depression and his demise as a result of that. And so, being all the popularity of having done it, but then not feeling that, how do you get through this and how do you do it in the right manner?
Yeah.
And then being criticized from every point, every angle. Are you doing the right thing for the people, or why are you doing this for the people? And so, this was really something that I was able to witness in my life. So
Wow.
thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely. Okay. So now we get back on the highway. We took our own little detour. We got some gas. We get back on the highway because there's a destination further down. Charles County is that destination.
Yeah.
How I know you said that your husband was in the military, so you were a military family at the time. How did you end up as Charles County being your home?
Yeah. Well, my husband and I bring this up. My husband's name is George Washington, and and you can imagine through the years.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, and he worked for General Electric Medical Systems that was located in Valley Forge.
Valley Forge with the name George Washington. We get way too many detours, but we'll leave that.
We're trying to stay on course.
Right.
So,
Fantastic.
General Electric Medical Systems also was located in Maryland. And so he was then offered a position to transfer to Maryland. And we accepted the position. It was going to be in Lanham. And so we took time to come and visit and had a wonderful realtor that took us around to a number of places, Columbia, just throughout Maryland, just trying to be close to the job. How I don't know how this person got us down to La Plata. I said it was a godsend. So we moved from Philadelphia to La Plata.
And he was working in Atlanta.
And he's working in Lanham.
Okay.
But we felt like we wanted our family to be, first of all, to have land and to be able to be in an area that they can grow up and run and feel comfortable. Coming from a row home to
Yeah.
Single family home with some property, and we just wanted to take advantage of that, and it felt right. We actually lived at the I think it was the Marriott for almost a year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, because until we were able to find the house and move into the house. And so it was a good experience. My children all learned to swim there, and everything kind of happened from that hotel for almost a year. But we moved to La Plata. I can tell you, when I first moved, I think I cried all the way from Philadelphia, first
Yeah.
of all.
That's the opposite end of the spectrum.
It felt like I was being ripped from everything I knew, every part of my life. Who would I know? To be in a place that everybody was a stranger. Who are these people? Moved into a community that we were the only minority in the community. Just didn't feel comfortable in the beginning. Um, I remember the first day I went to a grocery store, first of all, to go to a store and not know anybody. Now I look back on those days and I'm like, I don't even go to the store because it takes me 2 hours to do a 5-minute trip. So, but in those days, and what hit me, Joe, I went to the grocery store and there was coming out of the store was this elderly Black man, and he was walking out of the store, and his shoulders were back and his head was high, and he had a smile on his face, and I thought, oh, that makes me feel really good. And then he came across, a white gentleman was coming into the store. Now I know the name and I know who it is, and I won't bring that up, but immediately the gentleman dropped his head, dropped his shoulders, spoke to the man that was obviously younger than him, um, in a most subservient way, that it broke my heart. And I thought, where did I move to? What is this place that could take a grown man's pride in just a minute? Whew. I didn't want to have that memory again.
It's let me ask you, what year did you move down to Charles County?
It was 1986. I think it's 86.
1986 was
Mm,
a different time.
yeah.
1986 was definitely, and as a member of the Charles County NAACP, in doing a lot of research and doing a lot of things in the community where we recognize individuals who've been here and who've done things. The 80s was a different time.
Mm.
The transplants weren't as popular. There weren't so many of us. And there were the locals who have been here for generations. And the generations on both sides of the racial compass um, coexisted in a number of different ways. And I
Mm.
can imagine what it was like to leave a place like Philadelphia,
Mhm.
um, especially West Philly, even with the experience, which is really telling about your emotion in this memory, given the backstory you told us, a little while ago about, going out to clean someone else's home, and even in that, this experience, walking in and out of a grocery store in a matter of seconds, placed you in a different space
Mhm.
and put a different perspective on where you came from and now where you live.
Mhm.
And that's really to go through that, interesting to go through that range of emotion. And like you said, in a matter of a few minutes.
Yes, yes. But I have to say, at the same time, I remember taking my oldest daughter. We were at a middle school game,
Mhm.
and at Pickeraxon, and the bleachers, they pull down the bleachers, and they're metal bleachers or whatever. And um, there was a white lady that was walking up the bleachers, and she almost slipped. And because she almost slipped, she grabbed the shoulders of a black lady that was sitting there. And that lady pushed her hands off of her until the woman almost fell. But I thought, so much pent up, um, I don't know whether to call it racism or anima. I don't know what it was, but all I saw was, wow, what was that?
Yeah.
I mean, so I'm seeing all of these things happening in this community, and I'm thinking, what is going on? Eventually, I guess I became the black lady in La Plata, because I remember every board or council people would say, well, what about that black lady in La Plata?
Yeah.
you
and
know?
and I will it's important for me to also say that the African American community here in Charles County is very close knit. They know each other, and I'm talking about generationally, that who've been here for a long time. And
Mhm.
so it's not it I don't want anyone to believe that the first story you told was a slight on what was happening. And I'm glad the second story you told shows the other side of the spectrum in terms of how African Americans felt in the county. But it's also very important to note that in the African American community here in Charles County, they were strong together, right? They relied on each other for a lot. They banded together for a lot. Again, speaking with a lot of the older individuals within, I'll say the more seasoned,
Yes, thank you.
the more seasoned membership of the NAACP, I learned how close knit this community was. And so even though there was the gentleman at the supermarket, there was also the lady at the basketball game, right? Who felt confident and powerful in her own space here
Right,
in the county.
right.
So you 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 were the black lady in La Plata. How how does the black lady in La Plata come up with the idea that I need to help these individuals, or there are people in this county who need help, and I
Yeah,
think I can help
yeah. So what I found was that there were people that needed help, and there were people and resources there that could help them. but they weren't connecting. It was like they weren't speaking the same language. I would sit at a meeting and hear people talking about how do we get people to access benefits or access these resources. And and then I'd leave the meeting and the people are outside saying, how do I get them to hear that I need these benefits and I need these resources? I'm like, there is a disconnect.
Yeah.
And it was almost like people needed a somewhat of a translator to say, this is how you get from point A to point B. And it wasn't creating a resource, it was identifying the path to that. And I love your analogy of the road and getting down the road, because that's really what it was, is getting people down the right road to access it. And then the key was to document what wasn't there, because there are gaps in the middle. And so I started trying to connect people, and then I told them, let me know if that connection doesn't happen, because that helps us to identify gaps. um, my whole life, and especially since I've come to be in Charles County, has been a faith walk. I told you I cried all the way down the road. I got here, didn't know anybody or anything. But I can tell you, Joe, after a short period of time, I knew that this is where God had sent me. I knew that this was it.
Nice.
And from that point, it became helping one person and then another person. And then I remember the day I called a friend, Sony Jones, who was teaching at La Plata High School at the time. And I said, I think I want to start my own business. And she said, what are we going to do? And that from there, history was made, I guess.
All right. So this is a good place to stop, because we're going to talk about when we come back, we're going to talk about the early days of what Lifestyles of Maryland Inc. look like, and then its growth and what it was after that first phone call, to obviously a wonderful friend who said, what are we going to do? And then what it looks like today. All right. So let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
In the state of Maryland, thousands of people sleep outside, under bridges, and in their cars due to homelessness. They dream of having a place to feel safe. Lifestyles of Maryland depends on your donations to help them on their path towards self-sufficiency. Join us by visiting our website to see how you can get involved and be a part of Lifestyles, where there is help, hope, and transformation.
Okay, welcome back. In that last segment, we got some really interesting information, and diving into all things that is Miss Washington, from taking a few moments to really uh, to give some roses to her cousin, and for the work that he did with the Move organization. I'm sorry. Um, Down to crying on 95. I don't know what kind of realtor you have that got you to La Plata with a job in Lanham, but this county and this area couldn't be more grateful for. I don't know if that was a good or a bad job on their part, because La Plata was a really long way away from um, Landover. Okay, so where we left off, you had decided, based on being the black lady in La Plata and building on that advocacy from Williams Avenue, right? Building on that, and understanding the need to go to um, city council meetings and things of that nature. You realize that there were resources, and the people outside didn't have the resources. You said you called your friend who was a teacher at uh, La Plata High School and asked her, and said you had this idea. Her response was, well, what are we going to do? Which is an incredible response to that, because it doesn't sound like you actually pitched the idea.
No.
So take me from that moment.
Okay.
I've got this idea. I call my friend. What happens next?
Well, my feeling was that here we go. We need to see how we can establish a place to work from, how we're going to put this thing together. And as I said, this whole thing for us has been a faith walk, 26 years of a faith walk of how this organization would come together. I will tell you, we ran into some roadblocks, but they were all teachable moments for us. I spoke to you briefly off line by saying, we tried to find office space, and I'd had conversations with a very prominent family in Charles County that owned some property and about office space, and they were just several conversations, and they were just excited to help and all of that until we met face to face, and then the property was no longer available. That was kind of
And
a
what
hurt.
year are we talking about here?
We're talking about now that's in the 90s because
That's
this
in the
was
90s. Okay.
1990. So it was in 98, 97. We started in 97. So we started putting things together. So this was 97, 98, late 97. So um, that was kind of an eye opener for me to be able to do that. But I will say, through all of this, public schools became my avenue into Charles County, into all neighborhoods. Because if you think about it, the school system was the melting pot.
Yeah.
And so my fear of moving into this community years earlier in the 80s was that I needed to protect my children. And to protect my children, I was at every school. I volunteered between two schools and then three schools. I volunteered every single day. To this day, I still have parents that think I taught their children.
Wow.
Because that's how I was in the school. I helped with testing. Walter J. Mitchell Elementary School was my home base. I was there when they were transitioning from paper to the computer system for the students. So I helped with that transition and worked with getting all the students input into the computers and helping teachers with testing. And so I was there. That became that melting pot and also the avenue to a diverse group of people that I got to know. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And when you get to the school system and to the children, and then you're with the parents, so I headed PTAs and did group things there. So when it was, I met some folks. So when I got to the point of being turned down in some areas, I was fortunate enough I could pick up the phone and I remember the day I picked up the phone and called Rick Baldus and said, Rick, I need a space. I have no money. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I need a small space. And he made it happen.
Yeah.
I don't know if you come through La Plata now, where you see urgent care in that white building, down in the basement, I always say down in the basement, in the corner, in the back, in the dark is where Lifestyles was birthed.
That's where it was birthed, in the
That's
basement, in the corner, in the back.
Yes. And from there, we grew and moved over to next to 7-Eleven, which is no longer there, and the building that was torn down. And that's where we stayed for years. And just from that point and working with local churches and ministers and reaching out to kind of just answer the call that people had allowed us to grow. I think the vein that's always been behind everything we've done, it's been, we want to make someone's life better. And the idea is that every interaction, there's an exchange for each of us. Either someone is enlightening and bringing something into my life, and hopefully I'm bringing something into their life. It's never meant to just be a passing experience. It's always an exchange of something.
That's really interesting and obviously important when you do the work that you do is to see everyone not only as a human but an individual that you can take something from. all right, that humanizes them, and it allows you to not see them in any negative light or whatsoever, but always only to see the positive and be able to understand that they have something to either offer you or deposit into you, that you can, make a deposit into someone else. And I think that is incredible. That is not something that everyone has in terms of a gift, um, or no, you know what? I'll say it's just a gift, because it's not purposefully done, obviously. So
Can I
go ahead.
just share something with you? I think as you're talking, I'm remembering, and I've said it before in talking to people. I remember a gentleman who came in, and we were providing services for him. He was homeless and had come back and forth. He was taking showers and getting services from us. And I remember him coming and saying to me, he said, "Miss Washington, I just want to say something." He said, "I keep coming back and I keep trying to figure out what's your game." And I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, what's your game? What's your angle? You know?" And I said, "I don't understand what you mean." He said, "But that's okay." He said, "I figured it out." I said, "What is it?" He said, "You don't have one." And that has stuck with me
Yeah,
because so many people that are in need or underserved or living in poverty are dealing with people with a game. And when people realize there's no game here, there's no hidden agenda. I even tell people when they come to work for us or to volunteer or to do whatever they do, I'm like, I'm not a negotiator. I'll tell you what I got, and if you can do it for that, you can do it. But don't think that I'm here negotiating to see whether you're going to go high and go low. I don't do that. We don't have time. This is what I got. If I get more, I'll tell you. If I don't, I won't. But here's where we are. And so I think that stuck with me because that is something that I think is so important. When you're serving people, there's no game to it. And when I say game, I mean, like
yeah,
I said, I'm not trying to get anything from
yeah.
you except your best for you. And that's it.
And that gentleman, with his incredible deposit that he made, in terms of framing what you are and what your intentions are, is is easily the reason why, we can look to the countless awards at every level, from local to state to governors awards to partnerships, from food banks to actual banks to, you know to police departments and cooling stations and safe nights with churches. The the wide spectrum of individuals um, who see what you're doing, who are, even aside from those who are in need, but the individuals who want to assist you with what you're doing, speaks volume that there is no end game. The game here is just to assist those who need help, and the scale by which you all are doing it is incredible. Um, I noted the last few, like, really big awards you all got. I know you just got something from, a citation from the governor for outstanding service to society. I'll say. Um, but tell me a little bit about this grant you got from Chick-fil-A.
Wow.
That was incredible, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's appropriate that I love to be able to share this with the NAACP because the Chick-fil-A award was awarded to us based on, first of all, to get to the level of people even being able to vote for us. They awarded us that opportunity based on our impact on the minority community. And so that was certainly uh, we had 3 franchise owners that supported us in submitting that award to that application to Chick-fil-A, and for recognition. I don't know if anybody saw when they awarded me that, because they really tricked me, because they told me that it was a tie, and I needed to talk to the foundation, and they were all there to put a plug in why Lifestyle should get this award. And when I found out that wasn't the case, that not only did we surpass the category that they wanted to award us, that we applied for, they took us out of that category and made another category for us. And through that, we were awarded $175,000 from Chick-fil-A. The money, absolutely fantastic. That was great. But knowing the philosophy of Chick-fil-A and how they operate, and knowing that we are an organization built on faith. Yes, we're a nonprofit, but it is only God that has provided. And I heard you talk about all the awards and accolades. I hope what most people see in me is what God is doing, because it is impossible. It would be impossible for anybody to do what's being done if it were not for God. Even surrounding me with a team of volunteers and staff that are compassionate and working for little to nothing, but still willing to do this. And more so now, Joe, than ever, almost a year in a pandemic. And I have folks that are doing street outreach and working in shelters and providing food and taking things to cabanas and working with End Hunger, and just all that's being done is it's just nothing but God. And then most recently, we were awarded, and it hasn't been announced yet. We'll be showing that from Amazon, $20,000 award, the neighborhood award, the highest amount of money that Amazon has done for any neighborhood award, and certainly locally. They did it for a school, $10,000 in Prince George's County last year, but for $20,000. And I have to say that the staff that actually brought it to the attention of Amazon, it's interesting because I had done some speaking at New Life, and this this person was able to get a job at Amazon. But she said when she was at New Life and I spoke, she said, I wish one day I would have the opportunity to pour into this organization. And as God would have it, she was hired, she became a part of Amazon, and at a level that she could recommend lifestyles. And from her, including us in that, Amazon responded with, she said, within 24 hours, they said, absolutely, yes. And they're awarding us $20,000.
Wow. So, again, that's just more into the foundation, like you said, of who you give the glory to for where this is, where Lifestyles has grown to. It's humble beginnings. I know we've talked about quite a bit of money here that you all won in terms of gifts and grants. Let's briefly just kind of, um, if we can, the services you all provide, and they're vast. They're vast. So I will drop a few. I know that there are shelter services, there are food banks. Um, you all have a walk to end homelessness. You are very, very, very involved with um, eradicating homelessness, or doing as much as you can to provide assistance to those who, there's a large population of Charles County that live in tents in the woods or in places in the county that don't get the best resources. And so they rely on uh, institutions like Lifestyles of Maryland Incorporated to get basic needs. You all do clothing drives. I, Interestingly enough, I tried to drop some clothes off at one of your bins, which was closed due to the COVID, and I guess people didn't see the sign and just left the stuff there anyway, which was not the best, but but I understand. And so there isn't a facet of need or need based organization that you all are that you don't provide. Is that a safe way to say it without getting in depth?
Yeah, yeah, we're kind of, we look at ourselves as a one-stop shop. um, because whatever we don't provide, we consider doing a soft handoff to somebody that does. And that doesn't mean just giving you a number to call. We want to make sure you get access to those services. So we have provided burial services, the funds for burial services. And when you say from the cradle to the grave, yes, we've had services. We've delivered clothing to the hospital for newborns and provided them with what they've needed to get on their feet, including housing and other things. And then funeral, as I said, funeral expenses and things that we've been able to help families with, and everything in between. So I say that it's easier to tell people what we don't do than to tell them what we do. I mean,
Yeah.
from prescription assistance to whatever the gap is. And I think the key is that we document those gaps so that we can then see who can fill them or advocate for those gaps being filled. When we hit this pandemic and people were being told, you need to wash your hands, you need to do this and do that, and we were the ones that said to the county and to emergency services, where will they wash their hands? Where will they go to the bathroom? And we advocated to have hand washing stations and porta johns placed in areas where people could have access to doing that. We were fighting for PPEs for our homeless population and being able to get those out to them. Worked with the health department too, that they would go out with us and do testing. And now we're working towards vaccines for our homeless population that they've scheduled, and we're working to get them vaccinated and things like that. So always looking for the next, I hate to say it, the next big thing. What's the next step beyond providing food and providing those things that we have to do on a constant basis, but who's thinking about the other things? Who's thinking about the 72 households in Nanjamoy that don't have running water? And so, how are they, why do they have a high incidence of positive of COVID-19? These are health risks. These are things that people need to know. And so we're working in, we're taking water there every week now, and we've scheduled porta johns and hand washing stations for those households. And so we can't do big things, but we can break it down a little bit at a time.
Well, we are coming to a close,
Right.
and and as we talked about before we started, this is a snowy day in the DC area, and as you've heard, all that goes into running lifestyles is this is a day where you are obviously at most concerned about that population. So we won't spend too much more time, few minutes, but I have one final question, and this final question is 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 based on advice from a friend that I took in earlier on, because we talk so much about what people do and how much they give of their lives and themselves to to others, and we've learned so much about you. So my final question is this: there has to be something outside of this that you enjoy, that brings you peace, calm, that you just like to do on the one day off you get a month. If you had to pinpoint that to one or two things, what would that thing be?
So in non-COVID times, I love to hear my grandchildren. I love to have them in kind of in the presence,
Yeah.
I'm missing that. I miss that right now. Family and being around family. That is the kind of the best thing ever. I have to admit that it is my um, flaw not knowing how to self-care.
Yeah.
And just kind of wind down. I go until I drop. And I know that it's not good. It's kind of physician heal thyself type thing. I tell everybody that Corey Young is my assistant director, and I tell people that I really taught her incorrectly about that, but she's doing really a lot better at trying to fit in some of that fun and self-care stuff that you need to do to balance. I am desperately trying to balance. I've found a wonderful spa in Bryan's Road that I've frequented, and I'm looking for the next day to be able to go there again. She's sending me messages, and my body's sending me messages that I need to see her.
And she's
Um,
wonderful. The notes,
yes,
she's wonderful. Love her. Yeah.
so I'm looking forward to that. Um, Here's my dilemma, Joe. Um, And I don't see you making me get it. I don't know these TV shows, like you're making me get emotional about stuff. But my dilemma is this: I have lived through stage 4 breast cancer. I've had I have had double mastectomy. I've lived through a stroke where I was told I'd never walk or talk again, and I would be eating from a feeding tube for the rest of my life. I've lived through that. I have so much so much that I believe that God has for me to do, that it excites me beyond belief. It excites me so much that I feel like a child on Christmas Eve, that I have a hard time sleeping because God's getting ready to open up another gift tomorrow that is beyond what anybody has ever seen. And so that causes me, unfortunately, to be at a point of wanting to accomplish all of these things before I leave this earth, or at least get it to a point that I can pass it off to someone else. So I have to learn how to be able to um, balance that and taking the time. And I won't say enjoying life, because I enjoy what I do so much that brings me joy. And so it brings me joy to see families that go from living on the street or in a car to now being in their home, that we're sending over rooms of furniture that the community has put together to house them. It thrills me to see somebody going from no job to now they're employed, and their chest sticks out because they're supporting their families, and they're doing stuff. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. So to me, that's my joy. That's what keeps me going with all of this.
Well, I will say, um, on behalf definitely of President Sweat and the Charles County NAACP. I know we've given you awards before, and we um, you know verbalized publicly our appreciation for you as an organization and what you've done. I would like to thank you very much, Miss Sandy Washington, the person, for um, for this entire journey that you've been on. All of the pit stops, all of the detours, all of the things that poured into you and created who you are, that that gave you what was needed to survive and what was needed to give so much to so many people in Charles County continuously, not taking a break. I'm at this point, I'm even more thankful for that spa in Bryan's Road that will at least force you to take somewhat of a break. And so I couldn't be more appreciative and thankful for everything you've done, and clearly everything that you will continue to do in the lives of the residents of Charles County. So thank you again for your willingness to participate in this interview, and thank you to you, the viewer, for spending some time watching with us. You can follow all of the previous episodes of African American Voices of Charles County, on our YouTube channel. You can also find us on Facebook with the Charles County NAACP. We meet once a month. And any parting words for you, Miss Washington, and contact info for how people can reach out for services or to volunteer and assist with Lifestyles of Maryland Incorporated.
Joe, first of all, thank you so much. It just seems like the time went by quickly, and you just delved into so much that I haven't done in a very long time. Thank you to you and the NAACP for doing this, and this venue. They can reach us on lifestylesofmaryland.org. And reach out for volunteer opportunities, as well as looking at what services are needed. We're here, and we're thankful to this community for feeding into us and for taking care of the folks that are in our community right now.
Wonderful. Thank you.